This Sunday on Capital Connection, President Joe Biden moves into the White House.
Today, my whole soul is in this, bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation.
His calls for unity and his path to the presidency both have roots in Springfield.
United States of America, Joe Biden.
What the Biden administration means for Illinois. Deputy Governor Christian Mitchell joins us from Chicago, and the new number 2 in the House, Democrat Jahan Gordon Booth, joins us from Peoria. Plus, the Trump hangover. Reeling Republicans used to life in the minority in Illinois now lose their champion in the White House. What's next for a Republican Party without a president, without a chairman in Illinois, and without the votes to move on their agenda? Congressman Darren LaHood joins us from Washington. It's all coming up on Capital Connection.
From the Illinois State Capitol Rotunda, Capitol Bureau Chief Mark Maxwell is asking the tough questions. This is Capital Connection.
Welcome to Capital Connection. I'm Mark Maxwell reporting from the Illinois State House on this Sunday, January 24. Today, for the first time in more than a decade, Democrats control both chambers of Congress and the White House after President Joe Biden swore the oath of office on Wednesday.
I will be a president for all Americans.
Biden making big promises to the nation and to Illinois. Now, President Joe Biden has his work cut out for him to reboot an economy battling disease and to reunite a country still bitterly divided.
Let me introduce to you the next president.
That slip of the tongue would eventually come true 12 years after Barack Obama announced his running mate in August 2008.
Joe Biden!
The podium was set up where you see the sidewalk right now.
Historian David Blanchett helped set up that event for an Illinois senator who promised hope and change and rejected the notion of two Americas. Obama's running mate then, president now, with a similar message in his inaugural address.
We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal.
Surrounding the Capitol in D.C. and Springfield, Blanchett saw signs of division still lingering after a mob stormed the Capitol 2 weeks ago.
It is such a surreal scene to have armed troops guarding government buildings like you would see in some third world dictatorship. It is just so surreal, and especially here in one of the most significant Abraham Lincoln sites, where he was all about unifying the country and about equality.
As President Biden pledges to make our nation whole, Illinois Democrats hope his COVID relief package can make our state budget whole, too.
We got to advocate for Joe Biden to, quickly as possible, not in 100 days, in the 30 days, to get another stimulus package that really sends good money to state and local governments.
How much money do you want to print?
Wary of a federal bailout and weary of the National Guard,
This was not necessary.
House Republican Dan Calkins still hopes this new president can bring a nation from the edge back to middle ground.
There's always been fringes on the left and the right. Hopefully those things are not exasperated and people will come together.
That in this country, there was no obstacle that could keep you from your dreams if you're willing to work hard and fight for it.
Joining us now is Deputy Governor Christian Mitchell from the government offices in Chicago, the Thompson Center. Good to have you with us.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I want to ask you about the how. We heard a lot this week in the inaugural addresses of uniting a bitterly divided country, the simmering tensions that still linger from that hotly contested election. The olive branch is always nice. The rhetoric is nice about let's unite a country and move forward. But how do you do that?
Look, I think the thing about having Joe Biden in office, two things. One, just some basic human decency and compassion. You saw him be, kind of the healer and mourner in chief in the lead up to the inaugural ceremony. And then you saw a laser sharp focus on bringing us together, but also really focusing on the most important thing, which is beating this virus. I think the state of Illinois is in a good position to that. The country can be as well. But having a Joe Biden presidency means competency in that office, means a laser focus on beating the virus, means getting more PPE, getting more vaccine production, getting reimbursement for the National Guard. So practically it means we will be put in a place to beat this virus so that all Americans can go back to work while also having a decent person in office who cares about healing us in this time.
I don't expect you'll be offering any political strategy or advice to Republicans in the coming months, but what do you see as Democrats take complete control of the House, the Senate, the White House in Congress after one term of President Trump? What does that mean about the president's impact on American politics and the response from the American people to his presidency?
Well, look, I think, again, when you look up and you see 400,000 dead Americans, I think the number one thing people are looking up at and saying is like, look, yes, we're tired of this president's rhetoric. We're tired of the way that he is making us look to the world, but also I've got family members, I've got friends who have lost their lives, I've got businesses that can't open, I myself may have lost my job, or I'm teaching my kids from remote school. Where's the focus on the virus? So I think that if President Biden gets in and displays what he's already done, gives us guidance on COVID, says he's going to take lead and responsibility, use the Defense Production Act to get us the supplies that we need, if you get Americans back to work, if you focus on the number one thing that they all care about from all the opinion polls, that is the thing I think the American people have said. And I think the Democrats and Republicans should be able to get together around that, because we all care about the economy. We all care about our lives returning to normal.
I think it's fair to say Republicans are reeling a bit, especially in Illinois. They're not in power in Springfield and now out of power in Washington. Some of them even a bit, I think personally, some took affront to the heavy military presence. For example, Representative Dan Calkins from Decatur, a Republican, somewhat newer to Springfield here, but a former National Guardsman himself. And he felt that the presence, the strong show of strength was, in his words, quote, unnecessary. Why was it necessary?
Well, look, what I would say with all due respect to Representative Calkins is, we saw a couple of Wednesdays ago a real attempt at armed insurrection, sedition in our nation's capital. We then saw from some of the same groups, and this was all sort of open source, a flyer saying we want armed marches on every state capital on the date in question. So when people have shown you who they are, you got to believe them. You got to take the necessary precaution to make sure that people know that armed violence is not going to be the way we affect the democratic process in this country, to protect life and limb and property, and to show the world that we are serious about and capable of doing that. So our National Guardsmen, who have served incredibly honorably this year, not just on this, but in helping us deal with civil unrest, with helping us deal with the coronavirus, doing testing, and now helping with vaccinations, are extremely honorable and good at what they do. Having their presence along with the Illinois State Police and local state police at the Capitol there in Springfield made sure that people knew that if you came there, you weren't going to be successful at what you were attempting to do. And the hope is that show of strength helped prevent anything from happening.
It's that show of strength, or those jarring images that are now being seen worldwide here in our country during this transition of power, that reportedly some Capitol Police officers wanted to avoid. The optics of that, as a historian in Springfield or in Jacksonville said this week, described as what might appear to be a third world dictatorship. That image, not specific or singular to Springfield, but something we saw in capitals and in our country's capital, really nationwide this last week. What did you feel when you saw that image, and what does it say about where we are as a divided country?
Well, look, in some ways, it's the legacy of the Trump presidency, right? There's a straight line drawn from the rhetoric used by the now former president to some of the members of the U.S. Senate to, completely debunked claims about election fraud that led directly to a place where people decided to storm the Capitol, where a mob attempted to overthrow democracy. And, the fact that we were able to survive that, to come back from that, you saw in President Biden's speech an acknowledgement of that and what that meant for the country. You saw in the amazing poet laureate a conversation about how much that has really impacted our country. So we have to deal with that. We have to work our way through these divisions. I think, again, tackling the virus together, putting people back to work, having a real conversation about racial equality, which President Biden has pledged to do and which you've seen addressed in some ways in the legislature in Springfield, is how we get ourselves back on track.
All right, Deputy Governor Christian Mitchell joining us from Chicago, part of the Pritzker administration there. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
When we come back, the Republican response. Congressman Darren LaHood joins us from his offices on Capitol Hill. We're back in a moment.